Slavery is back.
Welcome to a place where private business profit from a captive labour force, yet pennies are spent on medical services to a population in which the Indigenous, the poor and the mentally ill are overrepresented. Where isolation, humiliation and degradation are facts of life. Welcome to prison.
It depends who's telling the story, I suppose. The prisoners would have one view, the people who work in the prison system would have another, and I think it's up to people to decide where the truth is.
Give government propaganda and the media spin doctors the flick. And check out Doin' Time for news, views and tunes on prison issues from Guantanamo Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello and welcome to the Doin' Time show. This is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. This is Marissa and I'll be taking you through until 5 o'clock this evening. And a warning that there may be audio images of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that have died. First up on the show, we're going to be speaking with Max Costello from the Refugee Action Collective. We had a really interesting conversation off air about refugee groups condemning Border Force judging itself. Now, basically, we're going to be speaking with Max about something quite disturbing, and there's a media release that listeners may want to take a look at on the Refugee Action Collective website. Refugee advocates who wrote to the Comcare regulator over alleged safety breaches by Australian Border Force, outraged that the reply came from ABF itself, clearing itself of any wrongdoing. So we're going to be speaking with Max presently about that. And then after that, we will be speaking with Anthony Kelly, who is from Melbourne Activist Legal Support, and we will speak to him about a class action in regards to OC spray being used against protesters at the IMARC protests in 2019. But before we actually speak with Max, I'll just give you a little bit more background with this first interview. So basically there's a quote here from the Refugee Action Collective saying the last thing you expect is a letter from the alleged offender, it being Border Force, saying we're innocent, but that's what has happened. So we're going to be speaking with Max about the fact that on the 12th of July, the Refugee Action Collective and Sydney's Refugee Action Coalition, as I said, wrote to Comcare, the regulator, that enforces the Work Health and Safety Act 2011. So we'll be speaking with him shortly.
You're listening to Radical Radio 3CR.
Black Spark is an independent, volunteer-run bookshop, gallery, music and community space in Northcote, Naarm, dedicated to creativity, learning and liberation.
Black Spark is a space for the entire community, free of charge, hosting art, music and literary events.
To keep Black Spark free, open and accessible to everybody, we need your help.
We are calling for your support for our rent fundraiser to keep our doors open into the coming years.
With your support, we can continue to host book and exhibition launches, art auctions, fundraisers, music gigs and facilitate opportunities and growth for emerging artists and grassroots communities.
For more information, visit Keep Black Spark Alive on chuffed.com or check out Black Spark on all the socials.
Keep Black Spark alive!
A 3CR supporter.
And you're back with the Doin' Time show, and I'd like to welcome Max Costello from the Refugee Action Collective to talk about the failure of the government to protect detainees at Melbourne's Park Hotel from COVID-19 risks, and I'm sure we'll be speaking about other issues as well. Welcome, Max.
Thanks very much, Marissa.
Lovely to have you. So I'm wondering if you could just talk about what happened and discuss a little bit of the background as to what's led up to this letter.
Yes, well, I myself, to a limited extent, and another refugee action collective, RAC Victoria, I'll call RAC Vic for short, another activist with RAC Vic, Margaret Sinclair, who has a diploma of work health and safety. Between us, we have written to the regulator, Comcare, the supposed law enforcer of, as you say, the Work Health and Safety Act 2011. That's the Commonwealth Work Health and Safety Act. We have written since 2015 a total of 76 times to the regulator, Comcare, saying we've got evidence, indicative evidence, that there are serious breaches of this Health and Safety Act in immigration detention facilities. Our early letters were mainly about the shocking treatment on Manus and Nauru, but of course in more recent times we've been looking more at and pointing out more alleged breaches in relation to onshore places, including the so-called alternative places of detention, the APODs, such as the Park Hotel in Melbourne. And every time, those 76 times, every time Comcare has replied, our inspectors have looked and found no breach of the Health and Safety Act. So that's the sort of background to the letter that RAC Vic and RAC Sydney sent, as you say, on the 12th of July. I'll just pause there. That's by way of background.
Sure. And I believe that in September, what happened? Did something happen in September this year?
We expected, of course, a reply from Comcare saying, we're concerned, we're looking into this or whatever. But no, we didn't get a reply from Comcare at all. And of course, the allegations we made were about the department concerned. Historically, it was immigration, then immigration border control or whatever, border, whatever it was called, and then more recently it's become Home Affairs. Well, we'd been writing for years and alleging that, I'll call it for short, Home Affairs /ABF, because people don't realise Australian Border Force is not a standalone police force. Australian Border Force is only a unit within Home Affairs.
Absolutely.
So our letters were accusing or alleging that Home Affairs /ABF were responsible for the maltreatment, the apparent breaches of health and safety. And people might not know this, but if you go to ABF's website, it says, quote, we are responsible for the management of immigration detention facilities, and here's the key bit, including the health and safety of the detainees. So within Home Affairs, ABF is the key alleged offender. So we write to Comcare and go into detail about the Park Hotel and other places, a long list of allegations we make, and out of the blue in September, we don't get a reply from Comcare, we get a reply from one of the alleged offenders, Australian Border Force. I mean, look, I'll just make the example. Say you walk along the footpath and a car swerves off the road, breaks your leg, the driver speeds off, you manage to get the rego number and you write to the police and say, look into this, there's been a serious criminal offence here, please follow up and enforce the law against the driver. You don't expect a letter from the driver saying, I'm innocent. I mean, really. But that's the equivalent. We got a reply from the alleged offender. And guess what? They said, I'll read you, it's only a sentence. Yeah. I'll read you what they say, but it amounts to, we're not guilty. It says, the Department of Home Affairs and the Australian Border Force takes its responsibilities under the Work Health and Safety Act very seriously, ensuring that it meets all requirements of the WHS legislation. The ABF provides an environment free of risks to the health and safety of all who fall under its duty of care so far as is reasonably practical. In other words, nothing to see here, we're innocent. So that's the remarkable thing that's happened.
It is indeed remarkable, and in fact, I'm just having a look at the media release, and I note here that it's not just Victoria that has contributed to the media release. You've got Margaret as well, but also Ian Rintel.
Ian Rintel from Sydney. We hooked up with Sydney RAC because Ian's been quite active in this space, and of course he's actually covered in the media cases where health and safety has been breached in Sydney and Yonge Hill, all over the place. So it's not just a Melbourne only or Victorian only letter.
The most appalling situation here, Max, is that we had, and we still do have, not so much in the Park Hotel, but back then there were vulnerable detainees that were trapped behind windows that couldn't open and, really putting refugees and asylum seekers strictly at risk in that, they weren't offered vaccinations, were they?
Well, that's right. Our letter goes into that, and as I say, we raise more than just the Park Hotel issue, but just on the Park Hotel, we pointed out that the detainees, along with aged care residents, people in prisons, these people and Indigenous Australians, remote community, these are the people right at the outset when the COVID outbreak started occurring. It was officially declared that they were the most vulnerable, the most at risk of catching COVID. And therefore, they should have been the very first being offered the vaccines. Now, the vaccines became generally available, as our letter says, in February 2021. Well, the vaccines weren't offered to the detainees at the Park Hotel until August. That's 6 months. Now, that is a shocking breach of health and safety.
Shocking.
And furthermore, as you mentioned, the windows were unopened. That's because the windows at that hotel are sort of built into the wall. They're not, windows that you can operate or wind something. They're part of the wall. And here's Comcare's, Border Force's reply. Quote, claims that detainees are deprived of fresh air are false. All detainees have access to fresh air and outdoor spaces, etc., etc. Now, the Park Hotel, they're saying we make a false allegation. Their denial is false. So
very much so.
We'll be following it up. I should just mention there's a meeting at RAC-Vic, and people are welcome to join RAC-Vic. We meet every Monday night at 6:30 at the Kathleen Syme Library just near Melbourne University. Meetings are open to interested members of the public. By all means, come along. We're meeting tonight, and I've drafted a letter which I've sent to Ian Rintoul, and we'll be seeking. If this letter's agreed to, I'm just only a draft, we're seeking an apology from the Secretary of Home Affairs and the Commissioner of the Australian Border Force, acknowledging that, and I'm quoting here from the draft, if a law enforcement body gets a letter alleging criminal offences and calling for enforcement action, brackets potentially including prosecution, an alleged offender ought not reply to that letter. And we also, this is a bit more detail, I should back and fill a little bit. Our letter to Comcare back in July was we co-addressed several of the current ministers that have, Home Affairs, Immigration, the Workplace Minister, who is Mr. Burke, and also the Attorney General, and because they all have various little bits of responsibility for detention centres, the Work Health and Safety Act, criminal enforcement and so on. And we said, look, please, could one of you please take up this issue, because we asked the relevant minister, who was the most relevant minister, to remind Comcare that it's supposed to be enforcing the law and these people are very vulnerable. So we're calling for, in our follow-up, to perhaps suggest that the Attorney General could call a meeting of all those ministers and clarify with them exactly who's responsible, in particular, for the Work Health and Safety Act and therefore for Comcare's performance as a regulator. And because we've been writing for years and Comcare just keeps saying nothing to see here, we're also suggesting that we're pushing the barrow, pushing the issue a bit. We're urging the Attorney General, if this letter is agreed to invite us to make a submission that could support a a proper inquiry into the history of Comcare's almost total non-enforcement of the law. So we're not letting the matter rest. We'll pursue it further, and tonight's meeting in Sydney's will think about it too. So I'm not prejudging what the outcome will be. But this is, imagine if the police, for the last 10 years, had just stopped enforcing speed limits. I mean, the nation would be up in arms. But here's a regulator that, with only a handful of exceptions, has never enforced the Health and Safety Act to protect detainees. The one major they did lay criminal charges last year in response really to a detainee's suicide at the Sydney's Villawood Detention Centre, and those charges are still in the pipeline. That looks like there could be a trial even next year, but that's a major exception to the general comment that Margaret and I have found, that they just basically, by and large, just don't enforce the law to protect detainees.
No, they do not. And in fact, taking up your point about what you were saying about the lack of fresh air and windows not being able to open, it simply is so false. Like, I interviewed a few detainees when they were staying at the Park Hotel, and both of them had mental health issues. This was back in 2020.
Yep. And
had said that they were not allowed to go outside. They weren't even allowed to go into the hallway.
Yeah, well, that's right. So, and furthermore, Margaret wrote a detailed letter. I wrote a fairly straightforward letter about these unaddressed, unprevented COVID risks. And sure enough, at that stage, there were 45 detainees at the Park Hotel. That was in August. They finally get offered the vaccines, and a handful of them might have been actually given the vaccines fairly promptly. We don't know precisely, but what we can say is that by September, 21 of the 45 detainees had contracted COVID. And Comcare says, oh, no, nothing to see here. They, it's up to the Department of Health to offer the vaccines. It's just astonishing. But we're hoping, our problem is, as you'd understand, being in the media, getting coverage is half the battle, and that's why we're issuing with Sydney media releases on these issues and trying to get some traction within the media. And you might notice in this last weekend's The Saturday paper, there was a magnificent article by Mike Seckham about the astronomical cost of offshore detention. So that issue is getting some attention, and perversely, it may be that because the federal government, the Albanese government's got a massive debt inherited from the Liberals, and the Treasury is looking for ways to cut the rorts and the waste. Well, $9.65 million on offshore processing. If that's not a waste, I don't know what is. So we hope Jim Chalmers will end that scam. But that's a bit of a separate topic. But whatever
not
can get
really,
us
it's connected. It's actually connected.
Yes, well, it is, and I've sent in a letter to the Saturday paper. I don't know if it'll get published, but I point out that in addition to his second superb article, there's something people don't realise. He mentions that the Manor Centre was closed, I think, in 2017, and he also mentions that no one has been sent to offshore processing since 2014. No one. And I added this point that the Nauru Centre, there's still a building there, but it's been empty empty since March 2019. And this contract that they're discussing with this American mob that runs prisons in the USA, the contract is for, quote, the provision of facilities, garrison, and reception services to arrivals. Well, there are facilities, but they're empty, so you don't need a garrison. Exactly. and there's been no arrival since 2014. So what reception services are needed? And we my letter says that Chalmers should apply the blowtorch to this scam. But I'm ranging a bit outside the topic, Marissa. But yes.
Yes and no. I mean, I can. It's always good for listeners to be aware of that background anyway. But getting back to the Comcare, basically there's a total failure, isn't it? Even before the pandemic, for over a decade to enforce the Act in relation to all this, yeah?
Yes. People, I don't know if people following your program and others would know about health and safety law in general, because all the health and safety acts around Australia are almost identical. And by far the most used and the most effective tool for health and safety inspectors is what they call an improvement notice. The inspector finds that there's something wrong about the way the workplaces run, might be physical, might be psychological treatment, whatever it is. If it's a serious breach of the duty, of the health and safety duty under the Act, the inspector will write an issue on the spot, an improvement notice saying you're breaching the duty provision X, this is how you're breaching it, and I order you by this notice to get your workplace into compliance by reasonable date X. The advantage of the improvement notice is that, by and large, they nip the danger in the bud before someone gets seriously injured, ill or whatever. But in the 10 years that Comcare has supposedly been enforcing the Health and Safety Act in relation to immigration detention centres, they have only issued 6 improvement notices. Now, WorkSafe in Victoria issues like 1,500 a year. You know,
yeah.
Comcare is the lightest touch enforcer imaginable, and it's clear that somewhere someone has got to Comcare and said, whatever else you do, don't enforce the law in relation to detainees. I don't know who spoke to who or whatever, but it's really, compared to health and safety enforcement generally around Australia, it is a glaring and shocking discrepancy. And of course, if health and safety is not enforced, then people are damaged psychologically, physically, or both.
It's very interesting that this has not been covered too much in the media, not since the tennis player.
That's right.
You know?
Yes, it was fortuitous that Djokovic was sent to the Park Hotel and it shone the spotlight on it. So every little bit helps, as you say. Your program, the Saturday paper, The Guardian, Guardian Australia does some good stuff. But it should have been, for example, a Four Corners program, 6 years ago.
Oh.
And we hope that this will happen. And we've actually, as I said, towards the end of our draft letter, we've urged the Attorney General to invite Vic and RAC Sydney to put in a submission that would lay the basis for a full inquiry into this 10-year of virtually no enforcement. Now, as I keep saying, that's only a draft. It hasn't been agreed to. But we're trying to, use whatever levers we can to get something done about all this.
And if people want to find out more about the topic, they can attend the meeting on Monday nights?
Yes. I don't quite remember the street address, but if you go to the giant tram stop outside Melbourne Uni, one of the streets that heads towards the Carlton, the Readings bookshop and all the restaurants and so on, it's only a little way along that street, and it's the Kathleen Sign Library, very pleasant little setting, and we have our meetings in one of the rooms there from 6:30 to 7:30 or so. So, yes.
And, of course, they can jump onto the website, the Refugee Action Collective website. Yes. Max, thank you so much for coming on the program. I mean, do you have any final comments at all?
Well, I suppose my main one is watch this space. I should just add one tiny little bit. What Comcare claimed, sorry, did I say Comcare? What Border Force claimed is that one of the ministers asked ABF to reply to our letter. Now, look, what we say in our draft letter back on this is, look, even if that's the case, I mean, an alleged offender, a government department that's alleged to have committed serial criminal offences over a decade's worth of criminal offences, a government department should know that it's not appropriate for them, the government, the ABF, to write, or they should have known. Even if taking them at their word that they were asked to respond, they should have known. Hang on, we're the alleged offender. You just don't do that. So it's no excuse.
And that's federal, right? Federal?
Yeah, federal. Yes.
Under the Labor government.
Yeah, but yes, I think all the Labor ministers concerned, there are overlapping responsibilities. They're all pretty flat out trying to catch up after 10 years of no proper government really in Australia. I imagine they're busy. Their staff are very busy, and a mistake, a slip, could easily have been made. But as I say, even if it was supposedly flicked to. I mean, I'll just take a very simple example. If we had written to the Attorney General and the Australian Federal, we've written to the Australian Federal Police, copy to the Attorney General, who's the relevant minister, and accused Department X of a whole series of serious criminal offences, and someone in the government office somewhere said, Australian, Department X, can you reply to this letter? I mean, excuse me. They would know that's just not on.
That's right.
There's no excuse.
It's a disgrace, and I've invited you on today for an extended interview. Usually, it varies with the show, with the Doing Time show. Sometimes we'll have 3 interviews that are shorter, but today I wanted to do 2 interviews, and we're going to be doing pretty soon, looking at the class action that the IMARC protesters are taking against the police. And that'll be another extended interview with Anthony Kelly following on from this. But I invited you here, Max, really so that we could speak in detail about what happened and to look at the background of what's going on.
Yep. Well, thanks, Marissa. And I'll just make one final comment.
Yep.
The class action and nearly, I'd say 99% of the legal action in this whole area is civil. Like class actions, say the law cases that taken to the federal court to get what I call fly them here orders back from Nauru and Manus. It's all civil. It's all there's no one has copped a criminal record out of this. The thing about health and safety law, as your listeners know, it's criminal. You get prosecuted, and that's why it's so important that the law be enforced, and the likes of the Border Force and Home Affairs and perhaps some senior officers or 2 get charged with criminal offences, because that's what it is. If you breach health and safety, that's criminal.
Indeed it is, and more spotlight needs to be placed on that.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thanks a lot for your time, Max. Talk soon.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
My name is Todd Fernando. I'm the Victorian Commissioner for LGBTIQ+ communities, and you're listening to 3CR.
The United Nations International Day of Peace is being marked with a rally on Sunday, the 18th of September, 12 p.m. at the State Library in Melbourne. The theme of the rally is Truth, Not War. It's inspired by these words of Julian Assange. If wars can be started by lies, peace can be started by truth. This will be a broad-based, inclusive, colourful and peaceful rally with speeches and music for peace, joining to show your opposition to AUKUS and the acquisition of nuclear submarines. Take real climate action that recognises the massive emissions caused by wars and arms build-up, and to march for truth and press freedom, to drop the prosecution of peacemakers like WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange. For more details, go to Melbourne for Assange on Facebook. Melbourne for Assange are 3CR supporters.
And this is the Doing Time show, 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.org.au. And you just heard an interview with Max Costello from the Refugee Action Collective. And we're going to be going now to Anthony Kelly from Melbourne Activist Legal Support, and we're going to be speaking with him about the OC spray class action, providing hope for accountability. Melbourne Activist Legal Support welcomes the class action against Victoria Police's use of capsicum spray and excessive force against protesters at the International Mining and Resources Conference, IMARC, in Melbourne in October 2019. And I'm going to now welcome Anthony to the program.
Hello, Marissa. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. So, Anthony, I've read bits and pieces in the media, and I believe there's been a few sources that have talked about this, but I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about what's been going on.
Sure. So, many people would remember that in October 2019, police decided to spray dozens and dozens of people standing with arms linked outside the conference with OC foam, or OC spray as it's also called. And it causes horrifically burning sensations. It can, eye damage. If it gets down your throat, it can literally burn the soft tissues and cause massive throat swelling and so forth. And it's a horribly traumatic experience to be pepper sprayed, and especially at close range and getting it in your eyes and in your clothes. It's really a horrible experience. And so dozens and dozens of people experienced this at IMARC simply for standing up and refusing to, necessarily obey police directives. Legal observers were present. We witnessed it all. We had a team of about 8 observers there over 3 days, and we had legal observers on the incident on the second day that's the subject of this class action. We produced quite a detailed report outlining all our concerns with the use of force and the horses, and including a detailed analysis of the incident on the second day. And thankfully, the concerns were taken up by 2 very important law firms and legal centres in Melbourne. So one being the Police Accountability Project, which is now at the Inner Melbourne Community Legal, formerly Flemken, and a specialist class action law firm called Finney McDonald. And so over the last 3 years, both of those firms have been working together and put a call out for people who were at IMARC and put together the basis of a case, a class action that was filed last week in the Supreme Court. And that file, the law firms on behalf of the group allege that the use of capsicum spray on protesters at that time was unlawful, and that it's a coercive tool when there's no immediate or proportionate threat to police officers. And so finally, after 3 years, there's a class action case that's been filed, and as Mel said, as you said at the beginning, we're hoping that it's a step towards accountability. It's one of the tools that we can bring to bear to generate some action on this potentially unlawful use of a chemical weapon.
So where is this being filed? What court?
The Victorian Supreme Court. And we don't have a date for the hearing yet, but in a month or two there may be the first hearing. The first sort of forum for the case, and it's likely that, like a lot of these cases, it's likely to take quite a long time before it's resolved.
So basically, this is against Victoria Police. I find it really interesting that to use capsicum spray for protesters, that's very disproportionate, isn't it?
Well, that's what the case alleges, and that's what Mel's has always said. The case is actually against the Victorian government.
Okay.
Rather than the police, but
sure.
The police are obviously the institution who carried out the use of force. So basically what Mel's has been saying is that we've seen OC spray misused as a coercive crowd control tool at protests well over consistently over the last 10 years, and we're seeing it used outside of its police's own guidelines. So the Victorian Police has a manual, and these guidelines say that OC spray should only be used when there is a clear threat, and should only, and also the use of force guidelines, which are legislated in Victoria law, should only be used when it's proportionate to the threat faced. So we're seeing it used outside both the law and outside Victorian Police guidelines consistently, and that's what this case will seek to get the court to deliberate on. Sure.
Because I believe that Mel's documented multiple human rights infringements at the protest, and this was in a 45-page public report, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah. And in an ideal world, there'd be class actions and civil actions and accountability cases for all of those misuses of force. But, with the capacity as it is, it's only really been the focus is on, at this stage, is on the use of the OC spray.
Well, it's basically unlawful state violence, isn't it, really?
Well, yeah, so that's what we see. So Mel's has often said that, this is the state and the police using its array of weaponry and tactics in order to neutralise and deter or strategically incapacitate movements from operating, and particularly when these, any sort of protest that involves disruption at any level, police will use a huge array of tactics to neutralise it, in a sense. And it's hugely problematic. We're seeing an escalation in this policing approaches over years, and it's essentially undemocratic. It essentially undermines our human rights and our rights to protest.
It's interesting, Anthony, that that we're discussing this class action, and even though what I'm about to say is not pertinent to this topic, it is in a way connected, because I don't know, you may have seen what happened with environmental protesters and protesters in general being fined or imprisoned if they go, for example, to a blockade or, to a space where they want to protest.
Yeah, that's right. We also see it as part of the same big picture. So our analysis with Mel's is that there is a collusion between police and industry and government in the creation of specific anti-protest laws, which provides police with increased powers to both arrest and search and interrupt protest, as well as increase the penalties far beyond any sort of proportion for engaging in protest activities. So we're seeing them in Queensland and New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania. It's largely coordinated, and there is this clear, distinct coordination between police and industry and members of Parliament.
So when OC spray was introduced, politicians assured the public that the chemical agent would not be used at demonstrations.
That's right, yeah. 1995, the Victorian Police Minister, PJ McMara, when he stated to the Victorian Parliament, it's in Hansard, that capsicum spray will not be used against persons offering passive resistance, nor will it be given to any police rostered on for demonstration. And that was literally a promise to the Victorian people, It's stated in Parliament. And, basically we saw that function creep almost immediately being used in ways that it shouldn't be. And the case itself, is focused in on the use of capsicum spray protest, but of course we know it's used on a daily basis against people in crisis, people who are upset, people who are simply either not obeying or not doing exactly what the police are saying. And we're seeing it used as a coercive tool in a huge range of contexts.
Shouldn't be used at all, really.
Well, yeah, so it's dangerous, it's problematic. It was brought in as an alternative to guns after Project Beacon, the big reform that came out of the massive police shootings. And whether or not, but we're seeing it's not being used in that way as an alternative to firearms. It's being used as a coercive tool, often as a threat. It can be, police often will draw it in order to threaten people to get them to do what they want them to do, or it will be used simply for someone who is just, talking to police in some cases.
Well, isn't it then outside police guidelines?
Well, that's right, yeah. That's what Mel's has seen, and other, police police accountability advocates have been tracking this for a number of years. It's come up in reports and in media, and it's been the subject of other cases as well, of course. So this OC class, this is the first class action that's tackled it. So there's a whole group of people that are alleging the misuse of spray. And, so we're hoping that it will provide some real clarity around the unlawful use of, the unlawful use of these sprays, and hopefully it will see some accountability and changes in the way police are using it.
And detailed recommendations are included in the policing of the IMARC protest report. Where can you get hold of that?
Well, it's available on the Mel's website. So if the Melbourne Activist, melbourneactivistlegal.org.au, and if you search for IMARC there. It's also probably worth mentioning that there was a lot of people involved at IMARC who were infected by the spray and not necessarily part of the class action yet, and that people can still join even after it's been filed, or they can join at any time. And it's no obligation. There's no actual risk or monetary payment or anything that people need to do. They can just literally register their names. And what's best is go to the Finney McDonald website. And that's, shall I spell that out?
Please, yes.
Yeah, it's PHIFINNEYMCDONAL, so FinneyMcDonald.com. And they have a page on the IMARC OC class action and email addresses and so forth. So anyone there, or if you know anyone that was at the IMARC protest in 2019, they can inquire about getting involved in the class action.
Yeah, look, I've been to a few protests over the years and I've seen capsicum spray. I managed to get out of the way, thankfully, but it really is a ridiculous, coercive process, in particular because our movements are non-violent.
Yeah, that's right. What we saw at IMARC was that literally protesters were linking arms and refusing to move. They were defiant, but they were peaceful. There was no direct threats against police. And we saw police sprayed in the faces of people who were sitting down, who were getting down, who were moving away from police at the time. It was used as a crowd clearance device rather than the way it's purported to be used. It's very clearly articulated in our report, and hopefully it'll be really examined really closely as part of this action, this class action.
I really hope so. And so this took all this time, like 2019, before the pandemic. And it's already 2022 now.
Yeah, that's right. And we know there's been other cases of police using OC spray protests, and so there may well be other class actions similar to this following closely behind. And I think that's one of the things that we see is needed for police accountability, because in the absence of a properly resourced independent complaints body where people who are assaulted or allege any sort of assault from police can get some accountability, people have to use the courts to some degree to get some sort of redress. So
a very, very traumatic experience.
Absolutely, yeah. So expensive, hard, long-term, takes a long time, shouldn't have to happen. There should be a really robust complaints body that can deal with a lot of these human rights abuses. And the government's got very clear obligations to make sure that anyone affected by human rights abuses from the state have a process where they can have their complaint heard and investigated properly and quickly. But at the moment we don't have that, and so people are going to the courts, and we'll be doing that. We'll be encouraging more and more of these sort of class actions and civil actions.
Good.
Until we get. Mm-hmm. So the other good thing to mention of this, of course, is that the legal observers present is really important. That we managed to have legal observers present, and now we've got a case that's going to come on, in part inspired by their reporting and observation.
Right. So Sorry, what do you mean?
It's just so you can see, it's really clear, you can see the link between having legal observers on the ground and the importance of them getting legal actions that follow up. Yeah, so it's we're hoping to do more of these sort of cases, encourage more and more working with law firms directly, so that legal observer reports and things that we witness at protests can get before the courts as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Well, let's watch this space, and obviously the protesters that are doing the class action won't be able to be interviewed at this stage, but I'm hoping after it happens we can work some things out and do that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as the court progresses, there'll be more information coming out.
Yeah, and we'll be encouraging people to turn up to the court. Hopefully it's not going to be closed to the public.
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm not sure how it will run on a day-to-day basis, but we're hoping it's not closed either.
Anthony, thank you so much for coming onto the program at such short notice. I really appreciate it.
Thanks heaps for having me.
Take care.
Go well.
Thanks.
Hi, we're from Fitzroy Primary School and you're listening to Community Radio on 3CR.
All the way from Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and touring Australia for the very first time is folk duo Watch House, formerly known as Mandolin Orange. From coffee houses to major festivals, Watch House has played it all, with their heavenly harmonies, songs and music. Watch House play the Melbourne Recital Centre 11th of October with support from the wonderful Charm of Finches. Also playing at Out on the Weekend at Seaworks in Williamstown 8th of October. Love Police, proud supporters of 3CR.
Brave men fall with the battle cry. Tears fill the eyes of their loved ones and their brothers and all. So it went for Joseph Warren.
Keffiyehs are Palestinian scarves, and they're a symbol of support for justice for the Palestinian people. Buying one will support the last remaining factory in Hebron that makes keffiyehs, and all proceeds from the sales support projects in Palestine, especially Gaza, as well as local solidarity organisations. From the traditional black and white keffiyeh to an array of modern designs, all scarves are $35 each. Explore the range and order online, or drop by 3CR during business hours. We're your support for the rights of Palestinians. Go to keffiyehs.org.au, that's KUFIYAS.org.au, a 3CR supporter.
Ross House has community meeting rooms available for hire at subsidised rates. Perfect for small meetings, student study groups, Zoom conferencing and seminars. Facilities include free Wi-Fi, display screens for presentations, projector and sound system, and a Zoom conferencing system. HEPA filter units have been placed in every meeting room. You can book and pay via their website, rosshouse.org.au, or contact reception during office hours on 9650 1599. Ross House is a 3CR supporter.
Probably wanna give you
No crime, no time. Fix Victoria's bail laws now.
Prisons are bursting at the seams with poor people. ISJA Melbourne is calling on the Victorian Government to release unsentenced people on remand from Victorian prisons. First Nations people are 3% of the population, yet represent 29% of the general prison population.
89% of First Nations women entering prison are unsentenced.
ISJA Melbourne is asking you to sign the No Crime, No Time petition,
which can be found on ISJA Melbourne's Facebook page.
Indigenous Social Justice Association Melbourne is a 3CR supporter.
And this is the Doing Time show, and we're nearing the end of the show today. And just wanted to say thank you for coming onto the show, both to Max Costello and also Anthony Kelly. And we had a very informative show today, and wanted to just remind listeners to have a look at what's happening with that class action with the IMARC protests, and also to keep an eye on what's happening with refugees and asylum seekers and work safety. It's approximately 4:53, and I'm going to be saying goodbye very soon. Stay tuned every Monday from 4 to 5 p.m. for the Doing Time show, and it's goodbye from Marissa, and I'll see you next week. Take care of each other and stay strong. Bye.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.